I was sitting on a plastic chair outside a little coffee shop in Tagaytay when my daughter called and asked me for the third time that month when I was coming home. There was rain ticking against the green metal awning above me. Not hard rain, just that soft mountain rain you get up here where the air turns cool and the clouds seem to settle right down over the road. A tricycle rattled past. Somewhere behind the building, somebody was frying garlic. I had a cup of Baracco coffee in front of me and a paper bag with two warm Panda Sol rolls I had bought on the walk over. And my daughter said, "Dad, please, enough now, come home." I remember looking across the road at a woman pulling a blue tarp over her fruit stand before the rain picked up, and I realized I did not know how to answer her without hurting her, because in her mind home was still Indiana. In my mind it was the chair I was sitting in. It was the coffee in front of me, the rain, the woman with the fruit stand who waved at me every morning, the security guard at my building who called me Sir Mark even after I told him 20 times just to call me Mark. So I said something I had never said out loud before. I said, "Honey, this is home now." There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Then she started crying. "My name is Mark Ellison. I am 70 years old. I grew up outside Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I spent 38 years selling heating and cooling equipment, furnaces, condensers, heat pumps, commercial rooftop units. If you had told me when I was 50 that I would someday retire in the Philippines, I would have laughed at you. I had a wife, Carol, one daughter, Megan, a mortgage I paid off early, and a little brick house with a maple tree out front that dropped enough leaves every October to fill half the county. That was my life, and I liked it. Then Carol died. Cancer. 15 months from diagnosis to funeral. 15 months. People use words like battle and fight when they talk about cancer. I understand why. But from where I was sitting, it did not feel like a fight. It felt like watching somebody you love slowly lose rooms inside themselves. First, she stopped driving, then cooking, then walking upstairs, then reading because the medication made it hard to focus. By the end, our whole marriage had shrunk into one downstairs bedroom, a pill organizer, a glass of water, and the sound of the oxygen machine at night. After she died, the house became unbearable, not because it was empty, because it was full. Her coat was still in the hall closet. Her handwriting was on labels in the kitchen. There was a coffee mug in the cabinet that I could not use and could not throw away. I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and for about 3 seconds I would forget she was gone. Those were the best 3 seconds of my day. Megan lived about 40 minutes away with her husband and two boys. She did what good daughters do. She called, she brought casseroles, she invited me over, she gave me jobs with the grandkids because I think she knew I needed reasons to get out of bed. But there is a difference between being loved and having a life. I was loved, I did not have a life. I retired 6 months after Carol died. Between Social Security and a small company pension, I had about $2,450 a month coming in, plus savings I was scared to touch. Megan wanted me to sell the house and move closer to her. At first, she suggested a condo, then a senior community. Then, after I slipped on ice one February and bruised my hip, she suggested I move into the finished room over their garage. She meant well. I need to say that clearly. She meant well. But the first time I stood in that room and looked at the little bathroom, the microwave, the small window facing their driveway, I had a feeling I was ashamed of. I felt old, not 70, old in the way people mean when they stop asking what you want and start asking what would be easiest to manage. That night I went home and poured a bourbon I did not even want. I sat at the kitchen table and opened YouTube. I was looking for a video about retirement taxes in Tennessee. I know. Famous last words. Somewhere in the recommendations was a video made by an American man living in the Philippines. I do not remember his name. He was sitting outside somewhere in shorts and sandals, talking about how much he spent in a month. I almost clicked away because it looked ridiculous to me. Then he said what his rent was. I watched the whole thing, then another, then another. By 2 in the morning, I had watched videos about Dumaguete, Cebu, Iloilo, Tagaytay, Baguio, visa extensions, hospitals, grocery stores, dating scams, electricity bills, typhoons, traffic, banking, and everything else the algorithm could throw at me. I did not book a ticket. That is important. I spent almost 8 months researching. 8 months. I joined Facebook groups. I read expat forums. I watched people who loved the Philippines and people who hated it. I made spreadsheets. I compared rents. I looked up hospitals. I checked flight prices back to the United States because I wanted to know how fast I could leave if I made a mistake. I even called my Medicare supplement provider and asked a question so confused that the woman on the phone finally said, "Sir, are you moving overseas?" I told her no. Then I sat there after the call and realized I had lied because I was scared to hear myself say yes. The place that kept coming back to me was Tagaytay. It was cooler than Manila. It was high enough that mornings could feel almost familiar. There were supermarkets, restaurants, doctors, buses to Metro Manila, and views of Tal that looked unreal in the videos. Most of all, I kept seeing ordinary people, not millionaires, not 25-year-old digital nomads with laptops by infinity pools, retired guys buying vegetables, couples walking to church, older people sitting at coffee shops, people living normal lives. That mattered to me. I did not want an adventure. I wanted a Tuesday, a normal Tuesday where I woke up and had somewhere to go. When I finally told Megan, she stared at me like I had said I was joining the circus. She thought I was grieving. She thought I was being manipulated by YouTube. She thought I would get scammed, robbed, sick, or stranded. Some of those fears were reasonable, some were not. The hardest part was when she said, "Dad, why would you want to be that far away from us?" Because there was no answer that did not sound like rejection. I loved my daughter, I loved my grandsons, but I could not build the rest of my life around proving that love by staying miserable within driving distance. I told her I was going for 3 months. That was the compromise, 3 months. I kept my house. I booked a round trip ticket. I packed one large suitcase and one carry on, and I flew to Manila with the kind of nervous stomach I had not felt since my first sales presentation at 24. Then I got up to Tagaytay and the air changed, cooler, windy. My first apartment was a furnished one bedroom in a low rise building not far from the main road. 28,000 pesos a month, which at the time was around $480. That included the furniture and building dues, but not electricity or internet. 28,000 pesos, about $480. Back in Indiana, my property tax, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and everything else connected to the house were costing me more than that before I bought a single meal. But I had a balcony. From one corner, if the weather was clear, I could see a strip of Tal Lake in the distance. My first morning there, I woke before sunrise because of jet lag. I walked to a bakery and bought pandesal without knowing how many I was supposed to order. The woman behind the counter laughed, not cruelly, and taught me how to say the number I wanted. I came back the next day, then the next. That is how it started, not with some big revelation. With repetition, the guard at the building learned my name. The woman at the bakery learned I liked my bread warm. A retired Filipino engineer named Ramon started talking to me at a coffee shop because he saw the Purdue logo on my cap and had a nephew in Indiana. He invited me to have lunch with him and two friends near Mahogany Market. I almost said no. That old American instinct kicks in. You think, why is this stranger being friendly? What does he want? He wanted lunch. That was it. We ate bulalo at a place where the broth came out steaming and the marrow bones looked prehistoric. Ramon argued with his friend about basketball. I mostly listened. At one point, they started laughing so hard at something I did not understand that I started laughing too. I remember walking back to my apartment afterward and realizing I had not thought about Carol for almost 2 hours. Then I felt guilty. Grief does that. It punishes you for healing. By the end of the first month, I had a routine. Coffee in the morning, a walk if it was not raining, groceries twice a week, video calls with Megan on Sundays, lunch with Ramon and whoever happened to show up. I started sleeping better. That was the first real change. Then I lost weight. Then I stopped checking my bank account every day. My monthly spending settled at around $1,550 to $1,700, depending on how often I went out and whether I took a trip somewhere. I was not living like a king. I hate when people say that. I was living like a retired middle class man who could finally breathe. There is a difference. At the end of 3 months, my return flight came up. I changed it. Megan was upset. I said I needed 3 more months. At 6 months, I extended again. That was when the conversations changed. She stopped asking if I liked it and started asking when I was coming back. I could hear fear underneath the irritation. She worried I was replacing the family. She worried I would get sick and nobody would tell her. She worried the boys would grow up without me. And if I am being fair, I did not always handle it well. Sometimes I got defensive. I would send her pictures of my meals or the view and say, "See, I'm fine." But fine was not what she was asking. She was asking whether she still mattered. It took me too long to understand that. A year after I arrived, I sold the house in Indiana. That was the point of no return in her mind. I flew back to clear it out. That week was harder than moving to the Philippines. Every room had a version of my life in it. Carol's sewing basket, Megan's height marks inside the pantry door from when she was a kid, Christmas decorations we had used for 30 years, tools my father gave me. I stood in the garage for almost an hour holding an old red-handled screwdriver because my dad had owned it. A screwdriver, that is how ridiculous grief can make you. I kept a few boxes. Megan took family things. I sold or donated the rest. On the last night, I slept on an air mattress in the empty living room. The house echoed, and for the first time, it did not feel like home. It felt like a building where home used to be. When I returned to Tagaytay, Ramon picked me up from the bus stop. The guard at my building said, "Welcome back, Sir Mark." The bakery woman looked at me and said, "Long time." I walked into my apartment, put my suitcase down, opened the balcony door, and heard a dog barking somewhere below. My shoulders dropped. That surprised me more than anything. My body knew before my mind did. I was back. Megan came to visit about 8 months later. On the third morning, we went to the bakery. The woman behind the counter saw me and already had my usual bread in a bag. Megan noticed. Later, we stopped for coffee, and Ramon came over, shook her hand, and told her, "Your father is stubborn, but we take care of him." Megan laughed. I watched something soften in her face. That afternoon, we sat looking out toward Taal while clouds moved across the ridge. She said, "I thought you were alone here." I told her I was more alone back there. That was the first time I think she understood even part of it. But understanding something and accepting it are different things. The phone call and the rain happened about 5 months after her visit. One of her boys, my oldest grandson, had started playing varsity baseball. She wanted me at the games. Her husband had been working long hours. Her mother-in-law was having health problems. Megan was overwhelmed. And underneath all of that was the fact that I was not nearby anymore. She said, "Dad, we need you here." That sentence hit me hard because for years after Carol died, I had wanted somebody to need me. Now my daughter was saying exactly that, and I was thousands of miles away. I almost told her I would come back. I really did. You are 70 sitting under a metal awning while rain blows sideways across a road in the Philippines, and your daughter is crying on the phone asking you to come home. What are you supposed to say? There is no clean answer. There is no answer where everybody gets everything. I told her I would come for 6 weeks during baseball season. I told her I would help. I told her I loved her. And then she said, "Why not just stay?" That was when I looked around at the rain, the coffee, the road I walked every morning, the people who knew me, the little life I had built piece by piece. And I said, because this is home now. She cried. I cried too after we hung up. Not because I regretted it, because sometimes doing the thing that is right for your life still hurts somebody you love. Nobody tells you that part about retirement abroad. People talk about cost of living, weather, visas, dating, healthcare, beaches. They do not talk enough about the emotional geography of it. You move your body to another country, but everybody you love keeps a map in their head of where you belong. Sometimes that map never changes. I did go back for 6 weeks. I watched 5 baseball games. I drove Megan's boys around. I fixed a leaking faucet at her house. I grilled hamburgers. I sat on her back deck in the evening and listened to cicadas. And I loved it. That matters too. I did not spend 6 weeks wishing I was somewhere else. But on the fourth week, I caught myself checking the weather in Tagaytay. On the fifth week, Ramon sent me a picture of our usual table at the coffee shop with an empty chair and wrote reserved. On the flight back, somewhere over the Pacific, I realized I had stopped thinking of it as going back to the Philippines. I was going home. I have been here a little over 2 years now. Megan and I are better, not perfect, better. We have a system. I go back twice a year if I can. She and the boys visit when schedules allow. I keep medical information where she can access it. I check in more consistently. I stopped acting like every question she asked was an attack on my choices, and she stopped treating my life here like a phase I needed to grow out of. I still miss things. I miss autumn. I miss turning on a football game at a normal hour. I miss my daughter in ways that can sneak up on me. Sometimes I see a father and daughter eating together, and it catches me right in the chest. I miss my grandsons more as they get older because time moves faster when children are changing. This life has a price. Anybody who tells you otherwise is selling something, but staying had a price too. That is what I wish more people understood. There was a cost to that empty house in Indiana, a cost to eating dinner alone, a cost to waiting for Sunday because that was the day Megan called, a cost to organizing my entire future around not becoming a burden. I paid that price for almost 2 years after Carol died. I was disappearing politely. Here I am not disappearing. I have people who notice if I do not show up. I have places where they know what I order. I complain about traffic. I complain about brownouts. I complain when the price of imported cheese is ridiculous. I carry an umbrella even when the sky is blue because I finally learned. These are small things. That is the point. A life is mostly small things. This morning I walked to the same coffee shop where Megan called me that day. The awning is still there, though somebody painted the posts. The fruit stand across the road is still there too. It had rained before sunrise, so the pavement was dark and the air smelled like wet concrete and leaves. I ordered my coffee. The girl behind the counter did not ask what I wanted, she already knew. I sat in my usual plastic chair with 2 warm Pandasol rolls in a paper bag beside me. For a second, I thought about that phone call. Then my phone buzzed. It was a picture from Megan, my grandson standing on a baseball field, taller than the last time I saw him. Under the picture, she had written, "He says Grandpa better be here for playoffs." I smiled and wrote back, "Tell him I will be." Then I put the phone down and looked out at the road while the first little drops of rain started tapping against the awning. I have a daughter I love in Indiana. I have a life I love in Tagaytay. For a long time, I thought I had to choose which one was real. I do not anymore. Home is not always the place where your family expects you to stay. Sometimes it is the place where, after everything has been taken away and rebuilt, you finally recognize yourself again.